Happening now on Grid Tonight, Jonathan Wheatley stepped down as team principal at Audi F1. Could he be on the move to another F1 team? And who will lead Audi forward? Kalle Rovanperä Super Formula campaign has been suspended. What interrupted the two-time World Rally Champions open wheel switch? MotoGP's return to Brazil did not go as planned. What happened to the track's asphalt, and how did the FIM respond? Hello to all of our viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lammers. With me tonight are Omi from JB Motorsports, filling in for Joshua Birch, and Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index. Throughout the show, leave your comments and questions in the chat for us to display, and visit gridnetworktv.com for our latest content. Now here's Omi with our top story this evening.
Absolutely. Let's get straight into it. Hello, Kobe. Hello, Matt. Hello, everyone. Great to have you with us for another evening of big news and lots of news as well to go through. So let's get very much into it with our top story. Now, towards the end of last week, the Audi Formula 1 team announced the departure of team principal Jonathan Wheatley, effective immediately. Audi F1 said Wheatley left due to personal reasons after being part of this project since April 2025. Now, according to Nate Saunders from ESPN, Wheatley is on his way to become the new team principal of Aston Martin F1, with plans for Adrian Newey to reportedly step down from that role to solely focus on car design and development. Saunders told sources told him that Aston Martin also looked at the former Red Bull team principal Christian Horner, former McLaren team principal Andrea Steidl, and Max Verstappen's engineer Gianpiero Lambiase as possible options before deciding to move forward with Wheatley. Link to this article is in the video description and photo courtesy of Audi F1. The Formula One website said the move to Aston Martin would also mean Wheatley returns to the United Kingdom to live with his wife after spending time away from her at work to the Audi F1 factory, which is of course based in Switzerland. Aston Martin team owner Lawrence Stroll has responded to the rumours of Newey being replaced by Wheatley, photo courtesy here of Aston Martin. Now, this is what Aston Martin then had to say. With the current speculation surrounding Adrian Newey's role in our team, I want to take this opportunity to set the record straight. As the executive chairman and controlling shareholder, I would like to reaffirm that Adrian Newey is my partner and an important shareholder. He is AMR's managing technical partner, and he and I have a true partnership built on shared vision of success for the company. We do things differently here, and while we don't currently adopt the traditional team principal role that you might see elsewhere, it is by design. As the most successful engineer in the history of the sport, Adrian's primary focus is on the strategic and technical leadership where he excels. He's supposed to be highly skilled. He's supported by highly skilled senior leadership team to deliver on all aspects of the business, both at the campus and trackside. We are regularly approached by senior executives of other teams who wish to join Aston Martin, Aramco, but in keeping with our policy, we do not comment on rumors and speculation. That was said by Lawrence Stroll, of course, the executive chairman of Aston Martin. And now, well, here we go then. Are you surprised, Kobe, that Wheatley departed Audi after 2 races? And could he help turn around Aston Martin and Honda's disastrous start to the new regulation cycle?
Well, it sounds like that Jonathan Wheatley was getting a little homesick over in Switzerland. So if that's the case, it would not surprise me if he wanted to come, close to home, back home, to be with his wife, so he can, be back in familiar surroundings. Because I'm sure it's been quite a change for him. He was with Red Bull for the longest time, based in the UK, and then just picking up your life and moving to Switzerland for this new Audi F1 project. And I'm sure that that was obviously a lot on him and anyone who has to move from their home country. So if there was an opportunity for him to come home, Aston Martin's factory is based right there in the UK as well. So it would be a lot easier on him, on his wife, and his entire family if he was able to come back home, if that turns out to be true that he is going to Aston Martin. But yeah, it is interesting that after 2 races he's already leaving as team principal. But I think he's helped contributed to getting them off to a strong start so far. I think Gabriel Bortoleto and Nico Hulkenberg has shown some really good pace in the Audi. I'm sure a lot of people, given the fact that Audi's, new to Formula One and that they have their own power unit, that it was going to, be a struggle for them. I thought Audi was going to be right back there with Cadillac, but Audi is, it looks like they could be in the midfield throughout the season, which is, really exciting for this brand new, project, as Audi is, taking over the long-time Sauber team. So I think they have a lot of good things going for them. So although Jonathan Wheatley is departing despite being with this program for almost a year now, I think Audi will be perfectly fine without him. But Jonathan Wheatley, he's leaving what seems to be a good situation with Audi to a as you said, only a disaster situation with Aston Martin and Honda. And to their credit, I think that from the time we saw them in Australia to China, I thought Aston Martin showed a little bit of improvement, and now we've had a week break between the Chinese Grand Prix and the Japanese Grand Prix coming up this weekend. So we'll see what other progress they've been able to make. I'm sure they want to have a much better showing since it will be Honda's home race in Japan. And I'm not sure when Jonathan Wheatley will be able to actually join the Aston Martin Formula One team. But if and when he does, it's gonna take a lot of work to try to get this program where it needs to be. And to Matt and Josh's credit, they were absolutely right about Adrian Newey. I tried to give Adrian the benefit of the doubt, given everything he's accomplished in Formula One. As as Lawrence Stroll said, one of the most brilliant engineering minds in Formula One history, given all the success he's had throughout his Formula One career, especially during his Red Bull tenure. I thought that, being a team principal would be really good for Adrian, to continue to add to his legacy. But as we've seen, in the preseason and to the first few races this season, well, Australia, because I don't believe Adrian was at the Chinese Grand Prix, but he was you can tell he was having a really difficult time, trying to manage, the additional responsibilities that come with being a team principal, because Adrian's he's known is car design, and developing the car and building, world championship winning cars and Grand Prix winning cars. So that's all he knows. And given the additional responsibility of being a team principal, it really seemed like he bit off way too much, and it was just a lot of responsibility that he just simply couldn't handle. So if you're able to get Adrian focused on where he's the strongest, maybe that will allow him to extract some performance out of this year's car and build an even better car for the 2027 season. But if you bring in someone like a Jonathan Wheatley, who who's used to more of this like leadership style role in this area compared to Adrian Newey, which is just in the engineering ranks, I think it could potentially pay off for Aston Martin. But it's not going to be an overnight fix. It's not going to be fixed in a few weeks or a few months. It's going to take a while to get this program headed in the right direction. But I'm sure Adrian Newey will be happy to have someone like a Jonathan Wheatley come in who has experience working with at Red Bull.
Evening, everyone. I hate to say I told you so. I guess more of that later in the show when we get talking about MotoGP. Yes, not a great start for Aston Martin. Well documented, and you're right, Kobe. They did make some steps forward in China a couple of weeks ago compared to what they were. The doom and gloom of pre-Melbourne, where they were only going to get to do 20-25 laps or whatever they were talking about doing in the race because of the issues that they had. But they found some fixes, I guess, to some degree in Shanghai and came forward. We'll have to see how they go, of course, at Honda's home race this weekend at Suzuka. But yeah, I thought Wheatley, he's been in the sort of shadow of Christian Horner at Red Bull for quite some time, especially at sort of the back end of the Red Bull dominant era, the Max Verstappen years prior to the last year, of course. A big move to a big manufacturer coming in, and Audi, they're going to throw everything behind this project. And again, they've done a great job so far. Bortoletta's been, to me, one of the early stars of the season in that car. They did a great job in Melbourne, and then Hulkenberg carried that on. If they could get both cars off to get to the start lights and get off the grid on a weekend, that would help them. But it's been 1-1 so far. And I thought Wheatley was going to be, great sort of figurehead to have there in that team, but it's not worked out for one reason or another. And I can say this because I live down the road from Milton Keynes, you could go to Switzerland and it can be beautiful and sunny and snow-topped peaks, or you can be miserable grey. And we've had all the seasons in one day today in Milton Keynes, and look at roundabouts all your life. So it looks like, I joke obviously, but that looks like the way that it's gone. And he's coming back to the carbon fibre triangle, as we call it around these parts. And he's going to be going to Aston Martin, which, again, if he's, as you said, Kobe, he's worked with Adrian plenty before at Red Bull. They will know each other. They'll have a good working relationship, I'm sure. And yeah, it looks like the sort of experiment, say, to give Adrian sort of everything in that top echelon of sort of jobs, TP and designer and everything else has not worked, clearly. And he perhaps needs some help. And what do you do when you need some help? You call on your friends. So if Wheatley was homesick, and of course this big pre-season that everyone has had in Formula One, he would have been away from home for quite some time, of course, during the winter to get this project up and running, ready for pre-season testing, and then the first couple of Grand Prix, which of course again have been long haulers, and we've got another one this weekend before our Middle East induced break that we're about to have. But yeah, perhaps that was the call that was perhaps made by Jonathan. Maybe said, to Adrian, if you need a hand, I can come and give you a hand. I'm not loving life out here in Hinwil and in Switzerland, and I can come back to sunny Milton Keynes and Silverstone, where the Aston Martin is based, of course, and give you a hand. So it looks like that's what is about to happen.
Yeah, and they certainly weren't going to bring in Christian Horner, right? Given his very contentious relationship with Adrian Newey. We remember, towards the end of Christian Horner's Red Bull tenure, the scandal he had, with the employer of Red Bull, and he was, accusing, with evidence that we actually saw, of him showing that disgraceful behavior, and then. Adrian Newey was really frustrated with that being a distraction. And, Adrian left the team, and then, then Christian got sacked, by Red Bull. And then it's been well known in the Formula One media that those two do not like each other. And I also saw reports that, as Omi said, that Christian Horner was a potential candidate to be team principal at Aston Martin. But I also read somewhere else that Christian Horner won't be allowed to work for another Formula One team until July 1st of this year. I believe he's like on a gardening leave or whatever, or whatever it is, the type of rules they have over there in the Formula One world. But yeah, when I saw that Christian Horner was a candidate, I said there's no way Adrian Newey would allow Lawrence Stroll to bring Horner into the Aston Martin stable. So like you said, Matt, maybe Wheatley and Newey have a really good relationship compared to the one he has with Horner.
And on the Horner note, when that gardening leave does finish, he's going to turn up in a Formula One team, and it's going to be out. Calling you that now.
Well, I mean, you've called quite a lot, right? So who knows?
I'm on a roll.
Yes, who knows? We'll wait till later on in the year as well to figure that one out and see which way that will go. But yeah, as you mentioned, it wouldn't be quite ideal with a team that's already having plenty of issues. Just to bring in some bring in some more hurdles and trouble for Aston Martin. I think they've had enough. I think they've had enough for the moment. So now with Wheatley then likely off to Aston Martin, Audi has decided to promote Mattia Binotto to team principal. Now, Binotto is mostly known for his tenure at Ferrari. He, of course, held the team principal role from 2019 through to 2022, after spending nearly 3 decades with the prancing horse as well. We saw Ferrari have a lot of issues when Binotto was in charge of a team, which ultimately led to one of F1's most prestigious teams moving on from him. And then, of course, Gunnar Dolliner, who is the CEO of Audi AG and the chairman of the board of management as well of the Audi Motorsport AG, said after the departure of Wheatley that Binotto and the team will continue to pursue the path they've chosen with determination by concentrating on their efforts on building a car that can challenge for the F1 World Championships by 2030. This photo, of course, courtesy of Audi F1. Without the pressure that comes with being the team principal of Ferrari of all places, do you see Mattia Binotto's second act as Formula One team principal with Audi going a bit more better than his one at Ferrari? We'll start with you for this one on as well, Matt.
Well, another experienced head, and someone that's obviously had, as you mentioned, only TP experience before at, one of the big teams. As you say, it didn't quite go particularly well for him in that portion, but he's had the experience of being there and doing it. And as I touched on, and I think Kobe touched on in the previous answer, Audi have had a decent start to their season. If only they could get 2 cars to line up on the grid and get off the line, which has been their problem so far. Bortoletto we saw last year is a good hand as a rookie, and he's continued to do so. Had some early wobbles, but the second half of the season he was much better, and was good in Melbourne. Hulkenberg, we know what you're going to get with Nico. He's a proven package, and finally now a podium finisher, of course, after that one at Silverstone last year. Podium finisher. I mean, unless they were going to promote someone else from within, maybe pull someone from their DTM ranks or someone like that, I guess they wanted someone with the Formula One experience that Binotto has, and seems like a fairly reasonable Audi kind of move, isn't it? We've got this guy. Okay, we've lost Wheatley. Who have we got? Well, we've got this guy. Well, we just give him the job. We'll just offer him the job, and if he takes it, then great. So it kind of was the A1, the 1A, 1B sort of movement there in the team principal chair. So I'm excited to see how this Audi project continues to roll through this early part of the season. Of course, as I mentioned, we're going to get this long break now after Suzuka at the weekend. But it's been a fairly strong start, and Binotto with plenty of experience in the head role, hopefully we'll push them on further as we get through the European part of the season.
Yeah, I think Mattia Binotto is probably set up to be more successful as the Audi F1 team principal compared to his time at Ferrari, because number one, I only said it. He had a lot of pressure on him when he was at Ferrari. We often like to joke that Ferrari are like the Dallas Cowboys of Formula One. And and when it comes to Dallas Cowboys, if you're the head coach of that football team, you're going to be facing a significant amount of pressure to not just get to the playoffs, but to make a deep playoff run and try to get to the Super Bowl. And when it comes to being a team principal of Ferrari, you're expected to have those red cars, at the front of the grid, battling for Grand Prix victories every single race weekend, and trying to break this, this very long drought of no world championships, on the driver's side and the constructor side. And, that's something that Ferrari really wants. So if you're the team principal for Ferrari, the expectations are sky high. So Ferrari, they don't expect you to be good, average, or good. They expect you to be great. And, I think Mattia Binotto really struggled, with the pressure of being the team principal, at Ferrari. We saw him have a very difficult time in that, but Audi, when they were named Sauber, they were, towards the back of the grid, and the car, wasn't necessarily the best, but and then we actually heard during the startup of this project that Audi was having a lot of issues behind the scenes, with the car, with the engine, kind of sounds similar to Aston Martin, right? But whatever issues they had going on at Audi, and they fixed it because they've come out strong out of the gate. And I think we could see some solid results this season from Gabriel Bortoletto and Nico Hulkenberg. If as Matt said, they're able to get 2 cars to launch off the grid, and I just see a lot of potential in this project. And I think Mattia Binotto can do a good job with Audi F1, because he's going to be with a smaller team. Yeah, yes, it's a new manufacturer, so they're going to be ours. But as of right now, Audi do not have those expectations to be up there fighting for wins and world championships right now. I think right now, if they're able to solidify themselves in the midfield as they look like in midfield runner after the first 2 race weekends, I think that'll be a huge win for Audi year one in Formula One. But but as the CEO of Audi AG said, they want to be able to challenge for F1 World Championships by 2030, and that's something that Mattia Binotto was not able to do at Ferrari. So let's say we get to 2030, and Audi has developed a car that's capable of running at the front of the grid, and then Mattia Binotto is not able to capitalize on that as the team principal, if he's still there by then, and he runs into the same issues we saw during his tenure at Ferrari, then I believe he could potentially be in trouble. But given where he is right now, I think he's in a in an environment where he can succeed, because the cameras won't be following you with your every move, unlike Bennett Ferrari.
Yeah, absolutely. The attention span goes very much down as well. Especially until we do find themselves, especially when the team do find themselves contending for a few championships, and then even then you're not Ferrari at the end of the day. So it's a lot more. It's a lot more calmer as well. So it'll be interesting to see how the dynamic will play out. Well, that's the dynamic possibly coming to Aston Martin, but definitely happening at Audi. Unfortunately, as we progress now through into our second story, we've got a dynamic which we were really looking forward to, but it's not going to be shaping out the way we would have expected. Now, after leaving the World Rally Championship to pursue a career in open wheel racing, two-time World Rally Champion Kalle Rovanperä has withdrawn from his seat with Toyota in Super Formula. The news was announced by Toyota Motor Corporation Chairman Akio Toyoda, who stated how Toyota has supported his switch to rally cars to single-seaters, and praised how Rovanperä was shaving seconds off his time with every drive. Unfortunately, he also has revealed that Rovanperä's body has struggled to keep up with the speed of the open-wheel racing cars. Now, Rovanperä received medical diagnosis, which led to Toyota determining that it wasn't a good idea for the Finnish dry racing driver to compete in the upcoming season of Super Formula in Japan. Given how badly Rovanperä wanted to make this career switch, Toyota admitted that he wrestled with this decision, but it ultimately came down to wanting to protect the driver instead of letting him race through it. In the last few months, two incidents which have led us to where we are today, with Toyota pulling the plug on Rovanperä's 2026 Super Formula campaign. During the off-season test session in the Super Formula car, Rovanperä wasn't able to compete in the test session after receiving a diagnosis of vertigo. Then to get additional open wheel experience, Toyota had him run in the Formula Regional Oceania Trophy in New Zealand. And while Rovanperä had some positive moments in that series, he was unable to complete the season after sitting out the end of the season due to illness, photo courtesy of Toyota Gazoo Racing New Zealand. Now, we're going to read the statement from the man themselves. Hey, everyone, I just have some difficult news to share. I'll be stepping back from the upcoming races and my participation in this year's Super Formula season. I've been working with medical issues for already a longer period, which have gotten worse this year. My health doesn't allow me to continue safely at the moment. Now, my first priority is to fix that. Feedback and progress this year shows that there's good potential in this project. My chapter in circuit racing isn't finished. I'm more than sorry for those people who hope to see me on track. I'm looking forward to see you all as soon as possible. I'm grateful to Morzizo, TGR, and my partners for their care and for standing by me. And I'll keep working hard to come back stronger. Thank you for your understanding and your continued support. Now, as you can see at the bottom of screen, we had a whole segment for this. We had Kalle Watch ready to go. And since this was, of course, one of the most anticipated storylines of 2026, and Kobe will come to you first on this, so we can let Matt just, relax, breathe that, unfortunately, and just, and just basically get through that he's just unfortunately lost what he was really looking forward to. So we'll let him have a few moments. We'll let him have those few moments alone. So I'll come to you, Kobe, in terms of how disappointed are you for Rovanperä?
Yeah, and to put it into perspective how major of a storyline this was, we had Kalle Watch ready to go all throughout the season. After every Kalle Rovanperä race this season, Matt was going to have a Kalle Watch segment where he was going to update you all on his progress. And it's such a shame that our beautiful graphic that Joe's made, it's probably going to have to, go away for maybe the rest of 2026, and maybe we'll bring it back out in 2027 when hopefully he's healthy. But to answer the question, I mean, I'm absolutely gutted for Kalle Rovanperä because we know what he's capable of in rally racing. He's a two-time World Rally Champion. He accomplished everything he wanted to accomplish in that discipline of motorsports. But after feeling like that he's checked all the boxes over there, he wanted to switch to open wheel racing and see if he can make it all the way to Formula One and get on the road to Formula One. So Toyota, you know, they've shown how much they supported Kalle Rovanperä, his dreams, you know, trying to make it to Formula One. So they put together a plan, you know, to try to get him there. I thought they put together a really good plan for him, have him go racing, you know, Super Formula in this season, which was supposed to happen, but sadly it won't now. And then in 2027, have him go to FIA Formula 2. And if that goes well, he would be in, you know, he'd be in Formula One after that. And I know we're going to touch more about that in just a little bit. But yeah, it was very interesting, you know, to follow him over the off season for us, you know, just to see how he was doing during this transition. Cause after the World Rally Championship season ended, we saw Rovanperä get behind the wheel of that Super Formula car. Yeah, he was towards the bottom of the charts, but if that's something you never done before, that's to be expected. But to his credit, you know, before he ran into, you know, medical issues, he was getting a lot faster, you know, a lot closer towards the back of the field, and then, you know, we saw him have to, you know, go out due to vertigo. I don't know if the recent medical issues he's talking about vertigo, you know, hasn't really specified, but it was unfortunate, you know, missed out on valuable testing time in the Super Formula car that he was expected to drive this year. And then, as I correctly predicted, Toyota put him in the Formula Regional Oceania Trophy in New Zealand, in which we saw Kalle Rovanperä show growth throughout that championship season. And it seemed like, you know, he was starting to, you know, get open wheel racing, and that would be, you know, a huge benefit for him in this upcoming Super Formula season. And then they just said he was not going to complete the season due to illness, and then we were wondering what's going on there. Once again, don't know if that was vertigo, but it was just very odd. And then we get the news over the weekend that, you know, Toyota's is suspending his Super Formula program. They're gonna make sure he's focused on getting healthy first. So it was just a major blow to Kalle Rovanperä. You know, I wish it was different. Wish his health didn't have to, you know, mess things up here. And if it wasn't for whatever health issues that he has going on, it would have been fun to see what he was able to do in 2026 in Super Formula from the start of the season to the end, to see how much he could grow, like from race one all the way to the season finale, to see if he could be in contention for podiums or even wins. Based on what we saw in the test, you know, probably not, but we won't know because he won't be there. But first and foremost, you know, definitely wishing him well, whatever illness he has. I hope he gets better. But yeah, his big disappointment that he can't go out there and race this year, that his body just won't allow him to do so.
Yeah, it's like you, Kobe, kind of gutted for multiple factors, because that means we can't use that graphic much this year, and we were going to keep a real eye on. We talked about it in the off season. This year was going to be a little bit about Kalle Rovanperä and a little bit about Colton Herta. Colton Herta's lost a couple of Formula 2 races for the war in the Middle East, and Kalle Rovanperä is not going to be in Super Formula because he's not well enough. The day before, I was talking to trying to find out from some people on the internet where I could watch Super Formula this year, because it had a home in the UK on Motorsport TV, which is now defunct. So where could we watch it now? Because I wanted to keep up with what Kalle was getting on with and doing, and that's now disappointingly come to an end before it got started. As you said, Omi, when you were running through the notes there, you know, he went to New Zealand, as Kobe predicted would happen, and, you know, started off a little bit slowly, but was getting faster and faster. And the same was going for the test that he did do in Super Formula. And you thought, well, you know, once he's had plenty more experience in the car and learning some of the new tracks and all that kind of thing, he might be, you know, knocking on the door of some good results come the end of the season, and see where that would point him in what direction, and how quickly he would then progress up the ladder to go to Formula One, if that was his intended goal, or after all. But it's all going to be put on ice, certainly for the moment. Quote here from his good friend and our latest WRC rally winner, Takamoto Katsuta, on social media, who came to the sort of defense of Kalle, really. He said, "There's bound to be all sorts of speculation surrounding this sort of situation, but it's not because it's not because his physique isn't suited to a Formula racing, or because he lacks the necessary strength. The issue is simply that a chronic condition he's had for a long time has, through sheer bad luck, taken a turn for the worse at this particular moment." So it's obviously something that's been going on in the health of Kalle Rovanperä for a while. I take from that quote from Takasan, and perhaps the sort of added, I wouldn't say added speed, perhaps has not been different to going flat out in a Yaris WRC car, but sort of the added downforce and stuff has brought on stress and strain on the body that he isn't used to, and that's brought this this illness, whatever it turns out to be, back to the surface a little bit like we've seen with Alex Bowman in the NASCAR circle over the last few years with his vertigo issues. It's kind of sounds like a similar problem, and perhaps those two, if they haven't already, can get together on the old WhatsApp or Twitter DM and talk about their current plight. So real shame to see this happen to Rovanperä. Even if it happened mid-season when he'd had a few races, perhaps it would have been a bit of a different story. But to have it happen in pre-season before he's even raced in Super Formula this year is a real disappointment for all the WRC fans, including myself, that were sort of going to be the casual Super Formula fan this year to see how he was going to get on. And then, as we're about to touch on, where that could lead.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with both of you. I think it was really highly anticipated. We've got a lot of different great storylines happening this year. This was one of them, and unfortunately one that will not be continued any further for the moment. So, with 2 World Rally titles under his belt, Rovanperä was ready to take on a new challenge and basically follow his dreams. The plan was for Rovanperä to race in Super Formula this year before moving on to Formula 2 in 2027. This is, of course, what Kobe was just touching on a few moments ago. And then the next part of the plan would have been by 2028 at the earliest to make his way to the pinnacle of motorsport in Formula 1. If Rovanperä can get his health to a better place and Toyota tries to get him in Super Formula next season, he'll be 26. He'll be 26 years old at the start of the 2027 campaign. Then he'd be going into F2 at 27, and then the aim would be to be in F1 by the time he turns 28. But given the fact that he may need more than one season in those series, he might be pushing 30 years old before showing enough to warrant an F1 seat with TGR Haas F1. Now, given his age, could a lost 2026 season be the one thing that prevents Rovanperä from achieving his goals of going from the World Rally Championship to Formula 1, Matt?
Well, I think probably, yes. We touched a little bit on it last week on the show. Last week was 6 years since the COVID pandemic. This kind of feels like Kalle's about to have his own COVID year of 2020 all over again, where he can't really do a lot, and it's a wasted 12 months as such. That was the ultimate plan, wasn't it? Super Formula for a season, then go to F2. Toyota, as we know, big part of the Haas Formula 1 team over this last little while with their buy-in there. And then perhaps progress up to Haas in the next couple of years after some running in Formula 2. But to have probably 12 months on the sideline now, unless his health improves in the back end of the season and they can get him in, and maybe they can do some post-season testing if his health's in a better position, and they can assess and go from there. I can see in the long distant future that this might turn him back to WRC. Once Sebastian Ogier's finally had enough of being a part-timer, even though he won the championship last year as a part-timer, there'll be a seat open there at Toyota again. And as you say, he's going to be young enough to go and do that. But let's not forget, I know we're in a very different era now, that in 1992 and 1993, when Damon Hill came into Formula 1, he was 31. And he went on to win a world championship not so long after that. So, again, very different era of the sport that we're in now, when we've got all these young whippersnappers in Formula 1 over the last few years. Kimi Antonelli, for instance, the third youngest winner of a Grand Prix last week. It's just a big setback in terms of progression, but seemingly even more so in terms of time progression for Kalle. And that, as we know, time is linear. It doesn't slow down for anybody. So that's kind of the real kicker here, is that while everyone else is having a full season of racing in Super Formula, he's going to be sat on the sidelines.
Yeah, and when his racing I guess the plan that Toyota had for Kalle Rovanperä, when it was brought to light, even I thought 1 year in each series, would be a tall ask of someone who has never, been in open wheel racing before. I figured he would probably need maybe 2 seasons at minimum in both, and it was very ambitious, expecting him to, come from rally cars and to be a Super Formula, contender in year one. Usually if you have someone like making a switch like this, you need to give them a year or so to get their feet under their belt to see what their full potential is. And given where Kalle was on the speed chart in Super Formula testing, yeah, Matt, you're right. He was, towards the he was really off the pace, and then he got better, but he wasn't, quick enough to be, a true contender in Super Formula, given the timeline that Toyota had laid out for Rovanperä. I feel like that he would probably have to go out and contend for the championship in year one if they wanted to keep that, because if you're, not finishing inside the points, then maybe you probably would not move him on to Formula 2, because if you're not competitive in Super Formula, it makes you wonder, like, can you be competitive in Formula 2? So I thought that maybe, if he had a so-so rookie year and then came back strong and started contending for podium in 1 year 2, then maybe you would move on. And then, Formula 2, if he goes out there and, doesn't do well his rookie year in that series, are you going to really promote him to Formula 1? Because Toyota wasn't just going to give, Kalle Rovanperä, a seat with TGR Haas F1. He was going to have to go out there, and earn it. So I feel like, trying to put him in each series, 1 year you're in Super Formula, then you're in F2, and then you're moving up to Formula 1. I feel like that timeline, was extremely ambitious, but given the given the fact that he's 25 years old now, I feel like at his current age, they will kind of buy him a year where if year one didn't go well in Super Formula, Formula 2, that he could be afforded a second season in the sport, and just to see where he's able to go. But I feel like losing this season could be a big deal, and I'm not sure if it will be the only reason, but I think it could certainly be one of the reasons why making it to Formula 1, may not happen. But you brought up a good point, Matt, about, Damon Hill, age 31, getting into Formula 1. And, times are obviously different. And I was thinking about Brendan Hartley, who got into Formula 1 later on as well. I just looked it up, and Brendan Hartley was actually 27 years old when he made it to Formula 1, when he was with the team now known as Racing Bulls. So Kalle Rovanperä, would potentially be 28 years old at the earliest if he's able to resume his plan with Toyota for next year. So I guess it's not impossible for him to make it to Formula 1 if a 27-year-old Brendan Hartley could make it into F1 as well.
Yeah, and as you say, it was already very, very ambitious as well. The whole timeline that they'd set out, there was very much a chance of an extra year being needed, but this whole 2026 season basically being removed is basically kind of now taken a year away, and like completely delayed this off what was already going to be such a tight but plan which had hope. And while there's still a little bit of hope, as you mentioned, it's definitely reduced as well. And all of this is, of course, if even Rovanperä is in a position to be able to race very, very shortly, which we hope he is, and we will send our best wishes to him, so he is hopefully able to be back doing what he absolutely loves, and he can try and continue to chase his dream of reaching Formula 1. Okay, well, now moving on to our third story then of today. Now, following a controversial weekend in MotoGP's first Brazilian Grand Prix in 22 years, the FIM has responded to the criticism of poor track conditions we saw at the Autodromo International Ayrton Senna. As we discussed on Sunday's Grid Live wrap-up show, before MotoGP arrived in Goiânia, there was heavy rain that flooded the track, but thankfully the water receded. Once the bikes hit the track, everyone noticed that parts of the asphalt started to come up and a sinkhole formed on track. It was filled and repaved to ensure the race weekend could continue. However, minutes before the Grand Prix, the race distance was shortened from 31 to 23 laps. The move caught people off guard because the bikes were full of fuel for 31 laps, not 23. And then the same thing with the tires. They were designed for a longer race. Making this change so late for some people meant that they were unhappy, but MotoGP was concerned about the track's ability to hold up, so they decided to err on the side of caution with a shorter than expected Brazilian Grand Prix. After the race, photos emerged of a few riders with bruises to their arms due to the part of the asphalt coming up during the event. Now, highly respected MotoGP journalist Simon Patterson put the series on blast for how they handled the whole situation. From hiding evidence, accusing journalists of using AI to doctor photos, banning people from pit lane, and not explaining decisions about red flags and shortened races, the biggest loser of the weekend was MotoGP's comms team. It's 2026, you can't treat fans like idiots. It's disrespectful and it's pointless because the truth always has to come out anyways. Dorna has been bad at Chris's comms, but this weekend really highlighted weaknesses. A few days after the race in Brazil, the FIM released a statement addressing everything that happened. The FIM said that the track and race promoter carried out investigations into the issues with the track, including intense rainfall that contributed to the track surface coming up and impacting final preparations for the race weekend. Last Saturday, I should say, there was significant defect in the track that emerged due to the collapse of an undocumented old sewage system beneath the surface. The issue was located off the racing line and the track workers were able to fix it. Then, on Grand Prix Sunday, they noticed localized asphalt degradation caused by significant heat and on-track activity from the Moto2 race. Despite attempting to fix the problem leading up to the MotoGP race, there was still a small risk of continued asphalt degradation. So the interest of rider safety, they felt it was the best decision to shorten the Brazilian Grand Prix to 75% distance, which of course ended up being 23 laps. The FIM also emphasized how they manage MotoGP's homologation process for tracks and how it begins more than a year in advance. They explained how the process includes details of all construction areas, but each track requires a different asphalt mix and laying procedure. The track and promoter acknowledged the issues with the Autodromo International Ayrton Senna and promised to fix them before MotoGP returns to Brazil in 2027. The photo, of course, courtesy of MotoGP. Well, Matt, lots of information, but what did you think of the track issues in Brazil, and are you confident that they can be solved before next year's MotoGP race?
Yeah, lots of reading for you there. Take a rest. 3 stories on the show tonight, and we've had 3 of these. I hate to say I told you so. Adrian Newey not going to be team principal for much longer at Aston Martin. Kobe predicting that Kalle Rovanperä would run in the Toyota Series in New Zealand. And me, the last couple of weeks going, well, we haven't heard much about MotoGP in Brazil, have we? But there's a race happening this weekend. Oh, dear. Weather cannot be helped. We get that. That was the problem. And me and Josh talked about it. I believe it was during Hots and Knots on the show last week when we said, there's pictures doing the rounds that the track was underwater. Picture taken from the bridge just before the final corner, which is the main access in and out of the paddock for the trucks and whatnot. So that was a swimming pool. They managed to sort that out and got sorted. Friday went off okay-ish, apart from turn 4, which was one of the bumpiest corners, it seems like, in the whole of the MotoGP calendar, and pretty much everybody that had a crash fell off at turn 4 at the weekend. Then we got through Saturday morning okay, and then all of a sudden we found the sinkhole on, I was going to say driver's right, but on rider's right. So if you're coming out of the final corner, it was up. Luckily, it wasn't on the line. It was on the right-hand side up against the pit wall, relatively speaking. We had a big delay. We lost Moto 2 and Moto 3 qualifying on Saturday, and the sprint was delayed by quite some time, MotoGP sprint. they managed to run Moto3 qualifying after the MotoGP sprint race, and Moto2 qualifying was bumped to Sunday morning. So they had a qualifying session, then a warm-up, although they don't do warm-up anymore. So they had the qualifying session, which basically acted like an old warm-up before MotoGP had their warm-up session, and then the races. The Moto3 race was red flagged. We're talking the comms stuff. I still not quite understood why the Moto3 race was red flagged. Nothing's ever been said why that was red flagged. We ended up having a 5-lap sprint. Moto2 went off without any problem. And then we got to MotoGP, where, as you mentioned, Naomi, 6 minutes before the formation lap was about to begin, everyone was told, I say everyone, it was told in this order. They started at the front of the grid and they worked their way back, telling the riders and the teams it's only going to be 23 laps instead of 31. The Moto2 race was 26. So the Moto2 race was actually the longest race of the weekend. They could have waited. They could have put in a 10-minute delay. Yeah, I know you want to get your race off on top of the hour for TV time, but just stick a 10-minute delay on and you still would have got the race within the TV window, even with the shorter distance. So really not good. And a real shame for the fans, who we know the South American fans, how passionate they are. And we see that the Brazilian Formula 1 Grand Prix, it's always packed at Sao Paulo. Well, they came out in force this weekend. Brilliant stuff. They did a great job of making it a weekend. It's already, looking at the off-track stuff, has sort of made its mark on the calendar already from the stuff over the weekend. It was very well attended. We know, as I say, we know what the South American fans are like. They're so passionate about their motorsport, especially sort of motorsport and soccer, really, in that part of the world. And it's just a real shame that all these on-track stuff caused problems. And yeah, some of the photos of the riders, so Alex Marquez with bruises all up his arm where he'd been hit by pieces of the track. Top Rack came in with a handful of bits into the press conference afterwards in the media debrief, with a handful that he picked out of his levers and his boot of the track surface. Simon Patterson on the Race MotoGP podcast, which I listened to today, said he picked up a load of track and was taking it home as a souvenir. It was all broken up that badly. That I think it was lap 5 or 6. You could see it on the TV screen, and they didn't show that camera angle after that for some time. And then they started showing it because that sort of piece of track was being shown from the high shot or from the reverse angle or whatever. And it was actually what caused Marc Marquez to lose his podium position to Digi at the end, because that's where he made the mistake, and Digi got by him briefly until Marc repassed him again. So that could have been one if it had all got the championship going all the way to the end, and because of the track breaking up and Marquez had lost some points, he didn't win the championship. So good and bad weekend really for MotoGP. But as you say, and as I said, we haven't heard much about it. For them to sign the track off as fine, when clearly it wasn't, is really not good, and not the first time this kind of thing has happened. Kobe, if you can bring me back up full screen quickly before we finish the segment. I had a prop here. I was going to do this in hots and knots, but I was watching the race over the weekend and I was going, it was a new track. It wasn't a new track. This track's been there for a long time, and MotoGP actually went there in the 80s. And I'm looking at a new track for me. I'm looking at it going, it's a bit Estoril. It's a bit mossed. It's got that kind of feel to it. This is the track layout. This is how the track looks. So that is what we ran at the weekend without that cutout at the top and the one in the middle, which is actually on Kobe's overshot photo that he had before. I'm looking at it going, where have I seen that before? I unfurl my piece of paper. The bottom one looks very similar to the top one, doesn't it? Well, guess where that is? That's in Brazil. That's Curitiba, where World Touring Cars used to run. And they look almost identical. Even the last corner's the same. It's got that looping infield and then goes back on itself with a cutout at the top. And then the last corner's almost identical, apart from the chicane down here at turn 1 at Curitiba. It's almost exactly the same. So Brazilian track engineers, you really need to get some imagination, because they look exactly the same. That's my prop for the night as I throw it across the room. But yeah, not great. planning with MotoGP just seems like it was ill-conceived from the beginning. Yes. And I agree a delay would have been better to let the people prepare, but it sounds like it shouldn't have started. Well, the MotoGP, this is another point that Simon Patterson made on the podcast today, was the MotoGP riders have been boxed into a corner and they're not allowed to complain about this kind of thing for threat of bans, fines, and whatever else. So what did they do at the weekend? They just got on with it. Because that's the way that paddock operates, unfortunately. And hopefully with Liberty coming in this little previous few months, that might change in the future. But you can't plan to go to Adelaide on a street track for MotoGP when this stuff is happening on a permanent racetrack. We're losing Phillip Island for this kind of thing, which is just was bad anyway, but over the weekend and the stuff that's happened just puts it into perspective, doesn't it? That one of the greatest racetracks in the world is being lost to a track that wasn't ready and did not make it through 3 days of track action.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was covering IMSA over the weekend, and on the Saturday, while that race was going on, I remember Jamie just sending images and being like, "Oh, we've got a big delay," and everything that was going on when it came to the sprint race, which, as you mentioned, it cancelled Moto2 and Moto3 qualifying and delayed the sprint race as well. And yeah, it was like, I mean, I didn't really follow any of the on-track action for MotoGP, but I think it's the most that I've heard about it for a while as well. And then I also got a message on Sunday, as you were saying, Moto3 has already had some red flags. It was definitely one of those dramatic weekends, dramatic days, and from someone who wasn't even watching the action that was going on the circuit, it definitely felt like there was something going on, something that shouldn't be going on, was going on. And I think even before the weekend got underway, which, as you said, nothing can be controlled in terms of the weather, but there was definitely, when it got to the weekend, some other aspects as well, that when we actually did get started, it wasn't completely ideal. And great that you came prepared with a lovely little prop for us as well at the same
Just
time.
trying to find, and I found it here. I'm just going to have to download it so that I don't show the rest of the page. He says, now looking at his camera roll for said photo, which has disappeared. Excellent.
What's this?
There it is. The photo of the sinkhole.
Oh, yes.
Here we go. This was them fixing the sinkhole. Just in the middle of the weekend. Let me bring that up higher so you can see it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to that man's waist. It's fairly deep. And they filled it with gravel and just concreted over the top. So, I mean, yeah, health and safety. Who needs it? It's 2026. Just crack on.
Yeah, just got on with it. I don't think one of the craziest MotoGP weekends in a very long time as well. And saying hello to myself, Matt and Kobe.
And guess what? They're going to a track next that's never had any issues with drainage, track surface, or bumps. Oh, hang on a minute. Yes, they are. They're going to Kota this weekend.
Oh, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun as well. And you guys will be predicting in terms of your pick of winners later on the broadcast too. But in terms of news, that's about it for now until we get to Kobe later on. But just before that, Matt, you've got the latest from the Grid EPI update.
Yes, indeed we have. Thank you. I mean, we actually had some races this weekend. It's been 4 weeks because of the NLS cancellation last week, which we documented on the show. That we've actually had some racing in the Grid Endurance Performance Index, the biggest endurance championship in the world. And next week we will get the week 1 standings for 2026 on this show in this slot. But we have more races to tell you about from this prior weekend. Omi mentioned Sebring. We'll get to that in a minute. And I mentioned the NLS, where we actually had some racing that wasn't cancelled by snow. On the road on Saturday, as you may have seen, there was a win for the Verstappen.com Mercedes racing team of Max Verstappen, Jules Gounon, and Danny Junkendaya. But 2 hours after the race finished on Saturday, they were excluded for using too many sets of tyres. They are permitted to use 6 sets over qualifying, which is in the Saturday morning before the race, and the race. They used 7 sets, and they were thrown out. So Verstappen did win on the road, and he did the first and last stints. The YouTube numbers were massive. Everyone was interested. and then he got disqualified. So we wait to see what Max's next plans are, especially now that he could go and do the next 2 races now that Bahrain and Jeddah have been cancelled. So we could see Max Verstappen back at the Nürburgring over the next couple of weeks, but we'll wait to see. Anyway, what did happen in the race after they were excluded was that we had a win for Dan Harper and Jordan Pepper on Saturday in the Rover BMW. That is that car on screen there. They were the winners in SP9, which is we know as GT3. In the Pro category, the Pro-Am race was won by Patrick Assenheimer, Tobias Muller, and Dylan Pereira. And Gabriele Piana, Mike Strasberg, and Mustafa Mehmet were the winners in SP9 Am. So the first race under the books there for NLS for the season. That was part 1 of 3 for the weekend for the Grid EPI. Next stop was Florida. And as we mentioned, it was the Sebring 12 hours at the weekend. A controversial one between those 2 cars, which finished in that order at the end. But the number 7 car passed the number 6 late in the race to win. Felipe Nasr upsetting Kevin Estre with his pass, which apparently was against team orders. Nasr winning along with Julian Andlau and Lauren Heinrich. So that's 2 from 2 for the 7 car this season after picking up the win at the Rolex 24 at the end of January at Daytona. GTP was also won by Porsche, and it was Grello to the head of the field for Manthey Racing. Thomas Preining, Ricardo Feller, and Klaus Bachler getting the win for Manthey in the number 911. Second prototype category is LMP2, and that was won by United Autosports. Phil Thayer, Hunter McElroy, and Mikkel Jensen getting the win there for United with their nice looking new livery with more white than blue on the car this year, which I have to say is very, very nice touch. And in GTD, a stunning drive in the last stint from Antonio Fuoco, although again controversial because he got tripped up by Miguel Molina in the Pro car. They came through to win. Antonio Fuoco, Simon Mann, and for our Women in Motorsports section, Lilo Wadu getting the victory for that team there. So congratulations to all of them. And of course, the next race for IMSA is the Long Beach supported race on the Saturday afternoon of the Long Beach Grand Prix for IndyCar, which of course is coming up in a few weeks' time. The last race to tell you about from the weekend happened in Italy. It was a 2-parter, 6 and 6 for the Mugello 12 hours, which concluded its weekend on Sunday. And a win for the Santalot Racing Audi team of Pierre Caffer, Elliot Earhart, Stephen Trimbaldi, and Ernst Ingebrigtsen in the black and yellow car on screen there, picking up the victory. Only 5 seconds separated them from the car that finished in second position at the end of the race after 12 hours. So it was a close run thing, but they get the win in that one. Coming up this weekend, the last couple of races that will form our first week's leaderboard. I mentioned Phillip Island a little while ago. It's on the schedule this weekend for the first 2 races of the GT World Challenge Australia, and the American version kicks off this weekend as well. Only 1 race per weekend this year in GT World Challenge USA, and they are at their traditional season opener out in California at Sonoma, which will have grass growing around the side of the racetrack, which is not a sight we often see, especially when we head there for NASCAR later on in the year. So Sonoma and Phillip Island, the races to conclude the pre-season of the Grid Endurance Performance Index. Week 1 leaderboard will be with you in this slot next Wednesday night, and that would lead up to the first grid ranking of the season on the grid ranking wrap-up show next Sunday. So ranking fans, it is time for us to give you some leaderboards over the next couple of weeks. EPI Wednesday and the grid ranking on Sunday. Pretty much bang on an hour on the show this week. Time to hand over to Kobe. He's got more of the headlines from the week.
Thanks, Matt. Time for some more motorsports news from around the world. After 11 years of competing in the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship, DS Automobiles will exit the electric racing series at the end of the season. The Stellantis Group's French brand is changing its priorities to explore new areas of technological innovation, such as focusing on its new long-term partnership with Cell GP Team France. During DS Automobiles' tenure in Formula E, they've competed in over 140 races, won 4 world championships, 2 drivers and manufacturers titles apiece, scored 18 E-Prix victories, including 55 podiums and 26 poles. DS Automobiles CEO Xavier Peugeot said after 11 years of commitment to Formula E, their brand demonstrated its ability to transform competition into a high-tech reality and believes they can go even further in Cell GP, which is a unique laboratory of innovation where technological performance and emotion meet, graphic courtesy of DS Automobiles. With one Stellantis brand out, another Stellantis brand is joining Formula E with Opel, which will come on board next season. They've signed a 4-year contract to compete in the series as the Opel GSE Formula E team. Opel was attracted to Formula E with the introduction of the new Gen 4 car, which is set to be introduced next season. And in the press release, Opel noted how the next generation Formula E car will have 600 kilowatts or 816 horsepower in qualifying attack mode, which is 250 kilowatts or 340 horsepower more than what they currently have. Under the leadership of team principal Jörg Schrott, Opel already has a team of vehicle development and strategy engineers and operational management working together to prepare for their debut season in Formula E. The CEO of Opel said Formula E will allow them to show what their brand stands for, which is German engineering, bold design, and electrified performance. Graphic courtesy of Opel. Destiny Spurlock is set to make history this weekend in ARCA Menard Series East. Spurlock is preparing to make her ARCA East debut at Hickory Motor Speedway, becoming the first Black female driver to compete in a NASCAR-affiliated series. She'll drive the number 66 Ford for MBM Motorsports with sponsorship from Foxteca. Spurlock's path to stock car racing is unique because she comes from motorcycle drag racing. In that discipline of motorsport, she became the first woman to win the real street class in the XDA Motorcycle Drag Racing Series, setting a new world record in the process. Last year, she became the second Black woman to compete in the NHRA Pro Stock Motorcycle category. And if her race at Hickory goes well, Spurlock hopes to enter an ARCA National race later this season and make additional starts. Her management team and sponsor Foxteca are documenting her journey of the transition from motorcycles to stock cars in our docuseries called Driven by Destiny, The Road to NASCAR. Spurlock said this moment means everything to her because she's always dreamed of racing in NASCAR since she was a little girl, graphic courtesy of MBM Motorsports. Last weekend, before the Mobile 1 12 Hours of Sebring, the 2027 IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship schedule was released. Once again, the Rolex 24 at Daytona will kick off a new year of IMSA action on January 23rd and 24th, followed by the 12 Hours of Sebring, Long Beach, Laguna Seca, and Detroit. The Michelin Pilot Challenge will have a standalone event at Mid-Ohio on June 13th. After that, the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship returns with the Salem 6 Hours of the Glen, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, the 6-hour Road America Michelin Endurance Cup race, VIR in Indianapolis. Michelin Pilot Challenge will get its second standalone event of the season with the return of IMSA racing to Lime Rock Park for the first time in several years on September 25th. The 2027 IMSA season will conclude at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta with Motul Petit Le Mans on October 9th. IMSA President John Doonan said each season presents an opportunity to build on the sports car racing series' incredible momentum, and the 2027 schedule represents the best of his long-standing partnerships and world-class venues. Doonan added that 2027 will also be a milestone year for several events, such as the 65th Rolex 24 at Daytona, the 75th 12 Hours of Sebring, the 7th anniversary of Laguna Seca, and the 30th run-in of Motul Petit Le Mans, graphic courtesy of IMSA. Nelson Piquet Jr. is set to compete full-time in the NASCAR Euro Series V8 GP this year. Piquet Jr. will drive the number 48 for Illumatech Racing, marking his return to stock car racing for the first time on a full-time basis since the early 2010s. The Formula E World Champion previously won 2 races in the Craftsman Truck Series at Michigan and Las Vegas, with another victory in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series at Road America. He said the Euro Series brings a level of competition that genuinely excites him, and he's looking forward to working with everyone and fighting for victories in the championship, photo courtesy of NASCAR Euro. And that's all of the headlines I have for you this week. So I turn over to Matt for everyone's favorite game. Pick a winner.
Yeah, thank you, Kobe. Pick a winner back again for yet another week. Here is the table. And there's been some shuffling around this week. I've jumped up to 8th, got 2 points at the weekend for Tyler Reddick and the number 7 Porsche. Josh, not here, is now joint 3rd with both the Joshes, JT and JB, with Tanner, who you'll see on the Monday show, along with Matt, who has now jumped ahead of Kobe by 1 point. So plenty of points still available. There is, as my phone screen turns off, 1, 2, 3, 5 points available this weekend. IndyCar at Barber Motorsports Park, NASCAR at Martinsville, the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka, and 2 points, of course, from MotoGP, as I mentioned earlier, They are in the town at Circuit of the Americas for the American Grand Prix sprint race as well, of course, on Saturday afternoon. Let's hope it gets off on time without the track falling in on itself. Sprint races have been a little bit up and down so far this season. I am going to pick, though, as much as it pains me, although you just feel like you have to pick him at Circuit of the Americas. You may not win the Grand Prix, but I feel like you'll win the sprint. My pick is Marc Marquez to win the sprint on Saturday. Kobe, who you got?
Yeah, I have to agree. Came back against Marc Marquez at Circuit of the Americas, as you know, since he has so many race wins here and lots of success. Everybody likes to call him the King of Coda, and while so far this season has been a strong start for Marco Bezzecchi and Aprilia, it's very hard to overlook Marc Marquez and what he's been able to do at Coda. So I'm gonna roll with the King of Coda and see what the rest of the weekend looks like after that. And I also have some comments from Adam. Adam says that Opel has plenty of success in the DTM series, for a very long time. Yeah, looking forward to seeing what Opel's able to do in Formula E next season. And for Adam's pick a winner, he's also gone with the King of Coda, Marc Marquez.
It is one of his houses, so we expect to see Marc Marquez do well at the weekend, which will give Kiska, the Grid Network dog, who gets points for Marc Marquez's victories, off the bottom, perhaps, of the table. Good to see some new names on that list that we haven't seen before, and some returning ones. So I hope everyone gets their picks in over the weekend for all those races I mentioned. If you missed them, here they are again. NASCAR at Martinsville, IndyCar at Barber, 2 for MotoGP at Circuit of the Americas, and the Japanese Grand Prix. Get your picks in on all of the Grid Network TV social medias. Use the hashtag pick a winner, and you've got all the way up until lights out, drop of green flag, start of race, whatever it may be, to get your pick secured for said event, and you could get yourself on the board. There is 178 points, I think it is now, off the top of my head, still available from here until the end of the season in December. And if the lead is on 11, that means you've got plenty of chances to score. So get your choices in, please, using the hashtag pick a winner to be involved in our prediction game. Time for Hots and Knots to round out the show. I don't have many of either, really, Omi, to be honest, and I spent most of my knots on MotoGP. So what can you furnish us with?
Well, I'm trying to think. First of all, from the weekend, I think it's actually going to be motorsport fans, just in general, over the weekend, and I'm talking about specifically the ones who are always so used to watching Formula One. Now I know NLS was on and it was getting a lot of the attention, but I posted a TikTok video, just a casual one while I was streaming IMSA, about what are people watching, and it was really great to see a lot more answers like MotoGP, Formula E, and then of course you also had IMSA itself. Of course, you're at NLS, but there's so much. And then even for this weekend, some of it has continued. Of course, you've got World Superbikes that is taking place as well, along with you have, of course, MotoGP, which we've just touched on. So there's so much motorsports on. It's really getting to that time of year where everything just begins to get underway. And it's really great to see that a lot of people are exploring plenty of different racing series as well. So, yeah, it was a great weekend of racing. There was so much to pick from, and that is what I absolutely love. There was so much available as well. Lots of people, I'm sure, were trackside in different places as well. And then even if you were at home, there's so many things you could put on. I think you could have had about three things on at once. There was absolutely so much on. So it was a glorious weekend of it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the three races I touched on in the EPI, they were all streamed for free. NLS, IMSA, Mugello. There was a big meeting on at Donington at the weekend for the BARC, and that had some good numbers on YouTube, I noticed. And again, this weekend, as you mentioned, MotoGP, World Superbike, IndyCar, NASCAR, Formula One, big weekend. And then we're all getting really excited, and then we get a weekend off because it's Easter. And then we're back again because there's loads of things on again the week after that because they can't go on at Easter. So we have again the other side. So this is the good time of the year when series are either starting or coming back after a little break, like MotoGP was and World Superbike has been. They've been off for pretty much a month since their trip to Australia. They're in Portimao this weekend, so that's going to be exciting. Jonathan Rea back after his retirement, but he's back for a wild card on a Honda this weekend at Portimao, one of his favourite tracks. So That should be good. My other hot, although it didn't quite come off for them, was RFK in the Cup race, running 1, 2, 3 for a time with Keselowski, Buescher, and Preece, but they were all sniped by that battery stealing Tyler Reddick to get his 4th win of the season already. Good job those bonus points for winning are involved, because he'd be nowhere near like the lead he has if it was points from last year. So another win for Reddick. 23-11, absolutely steamrollering them. RFK seemed like they found something, maybe. Looking forward to Martinsville on Sunday, because that's always a good race. And IndyCar at Barber as well. So, yeah, as you touched on, another big weekend of action to come this weekend. Adam says, hot Reddick winning at Darlington, and the former NASCAR, the alumni, as they were being called on the broadcast on Fox at Darlington at the weekend. Darrell Waltrip was in the booth. Dave Marcus waved the green flag.
Yeah.
So they had plenty of the old stars out in force at Darlington on Sunday.
Yeah, and actually, that's actually one of our other hots as well, in terms of hearing him back, getting that, getting the line in. We made sure at JBM, and also, of course, that was also being distributed over to USM as well, because you guys weren't there, and you guys actually aren't there for a few of these NASCAR races over the next few weeks. So yeah, we were able to, you guys, if you were listening there as well, you were able to hear the phrase as we got going.
Yeah, looking forward to getting back at Bristol in a couple of weeks after Easter, actually. Me and Mr. Owens, who is again busy tonight with work duties, so not watching. So as he is at the weekend, which is why last weekend and this weekend coming, which is why we're not on for Martinsville too. So missing it, and looking forward to getting back at it at Bristol post Easter.
Yes. Another one of my hot is recent rumors that have come. Nothing official as of yet, but we were meant to have about a 12-week gap for Formula 2 as well. But it appears like we might be having a trip over to Miami and Canada as well. So
really,
yeah, it seems like we might be getting the F3 won't be getting that treatment. They'll be most likely having a test. I think it's Austria where they'll be going for a test. They'll just miss the one round. But they were considering a lot of options for F2, F3. It was looking like it could possibly be a standalone event somewhere in Europe. But then, of course, comes a lot of questions of it. So they've just tried to go and now basically fill the gap. And the rounds in between, of course, being Miami and Canada, they're going to try and just slot them in when it comes to that. And I think with F3, of course, realistically, the only other round they could lose is Madrid later on in the year. But of course, their season ends in September. They've still got plenty of time in case they need to make up a round. With F2, with things going on in the world, they are also risking maybe Baku later this year, possibly Qatar, Abu Dhabi. So when you get all the way to November and December, I'd assume F1 would replace their races. But is that something that F2 would be able to actually do later on in the year? So I think they're just making sure they can actually get some replacements in and get some rounds in case of if the situation continues later in the year, because they'll be the ones who actually do get affected, unlike Formula 3 in a big way. So yeah, Miami and Canada could be it could be quite interesting for those two series. But yeah, those are the rumors that have kind of emerged. But whatever happens, they are desperate to get 2 more rounds on for Formula 2. So we may not have as big of a break as we may have been looking at, the 11 or 12 weeks that we possibly could have had.
Yeah, Monaco is the next for both, isn't it, as it stands at the moment? So
yeah,
with the 3 races in the States and 1 in Canada, it's probably about time that F2 went to at least one of them anyway, to be fair.
yeah.
So F2 at Miami will be absolute carnage if that happens.
It would.
Hope that my land is ready.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be
Be
wild. Yeah. So we should be. So if this is to happen, I would assume that news would come out very, very shortly. They were discussing it yesterday, I think. That's what they've had a whole meeting on it yesterday. So we'll hear soon, hopefully, whether it was successful, whether it was not, what they're going to do from this point onwards. But it is looking positive as well. Now, in comparison, now the only, I guess, not side of this is I would assume the F2 race probably around Canada would be somewhere near the 500, possibly at the same time, because of course F1 is basically pushed in the F1's pushed later. The support though have to be a few hours earlier, so you have F1
Yeah.
Academy on, and you have F2 on. Then of course, if F2 do actually get to be on the support bill as well.
Yeah, you'd have the F2 feature race during up against the 500. And if people aren't going to watch the Formula One because the 500 is on, I'm sorry, they're not going to watch F2.
Yeah.
Which is, but needs must, I guess, if that is the situation that ends up being the way you've described.
I guess, yeah. We'll have to wait and see, but it will be an interesting story to follow in terms of what happens. I'm trying to think now. In terms of, I guess, are we done with HOTS?
As Kobe's just put, if my our chat there, if F2 does go to Montreal, that kind of rules out Colton Herta going to the 500, doesn't it? So
yeah, and also the FIA has a rule that you have to prioritize F2 as well. So any ideas in terms of we'll just skip an F2 round and travel over for the 500? That would not be possible.
Yeah. No, that's right. Any knots? Not kind of emptied my knot cup in the MotoGP segment that we had before, so I don't think I've got anything else that I can roll out in the knot file.
I mean, I could definitely tell you, not from my perspective, currently the sickness I've got, which is it's completely ridiculous as well. And also, JB's completely basically like, he's had voice issues again as well. So whoever you were going to get on this show, they were going to have some form of an issue as well. It's not the reason why JB isn't here, but yeah, you were guaranteed to be cursed here today by one of us. So I guess that's a bit of a knot, but I guess Prama's removed IndyCar off their. Let me rephrase that. Yeah, Prama removed IndyCar off their website. I was going with that phrase correctly. So yeah, that's I guess also happened over the week. I'm trying to think.
On that though, Callum Ilott on the podium at Sebring in GTD. So he may not be getting any IndyCar action in, but he's slotted into a GT car fairly quickly and got on the podium at the weekend. So that's a good sort of bounce back for Callum, who just seems to have had bad luck yet again. It seems to keep happening to the guy. Every time he gets himself into a position of a seat, he gets taken away for various reasons. So, not really much else to add on the, as I said, on the not list. I think it's probably time we take it home.
Absolutely. I think it is as well. To see what other motorsport drama we can get across a weekend, which most likely could be and will be quite a bit. Okay, taking a look at our upcoming schedule. Sunday, grid live wrap up 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series race at Martinsville Speedway. Monday, we've got the grid rising show from 7 p.m. Eastern, recapping O'Reilly and the modifiers at Martinsville, ARCA East at Hickory, Indy Next at Barber, plus other motorsports action. Please continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you liked what you saw tonight, you can send us a YouTube super chat to show your appreciation. We've now passed 1,700 subscribers. Help us reach our next milestone of 2,000 subscribers. Hit the bell icon to get notifications so you'll always know when we go on the air. And follow all our social media platforms and visit gridnetworktv.com. Take 5 minutes to invest in the Grid Network through Patreon. Join Colin, Mark, Deshelle, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, and Nico, who all invest each month in the Grid Network. We encourage you to join this great group that keep us on the air all year long. Once we hit $500, we can afford to send our team to the track more often and continue growing our media outlet. Link in the video description. If you want to make a one-time donation, click on the Buy Me a Coffee link, get your name on the board, invest as much as you want, and consider buying your favorite on-air personality a cup of coffee, and they'll thank you on the air. For Kobe Lambert and Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index, I'm Omi from JB Motorsports. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.